When you check into the Bellagio, MGM Grand, or Caesars Palace, it is natural to assume the casino owns its iconic property, but the reality defies expectation. Many of the Strip's most famous resorts are now tenants, paying billions in escalating rent each year to Wall Street landlords like Vici Properties and Blackstone. This 18-minute investigation follows the money, revealing who truly owns the foundations of Las Vegas and how that ownership quietly shapes what every visitor pays. The numbers tell a story few guests ever hear. MGM Resorts and Caesars Entertainment dominate the Las Vegas Strip in a way that seems almost absolute. Together, they operate more than half of the casinos lining Las Vegas Boulevard, 17 out of 32. By the latest count, their brands are stamped across the skyline: MGM Grand, Bellagio, Mandalay Bay, Caesars Palace, Harrah's, Flamingo, Paris, and more. For decades, these companies were the undisputed powerhouses of Las Vegas, controlling not just the gaming floors and hotel towers, but the very ground beneath them. The scale is staggering. Tens of thousands of rooms, sprawling entertainment complexes, and billions in annual gaming revenue are all managed by these two giants. Yet the reality behind the neon is not as straightforward as it appears. The logos on the buildings, the uniforms on the staff, and the names on the casino chips all reinforce the idea that MGM and Caesars are the Strip's true landlords. In truth, the operators now rent the majority of their flagship properties. What most visitors never realize is that when they check into a room or drop a chip at a gaming table, the money starts flowing up a chain that leads far beyond Las Vegas. The operators, for all their visible power, are tenants in their own empires. This is not just a technicality. The difference between operator and owner runs deep, and it shapes everything from who controls renovations to how much risk the business can absorb. The 17 out of 32 figure is not just a statistic. It is the dividing line between perception and reality on the Strip. The familiar names are still here, but the foundation beneath them has shifted. The question is not just who runs Las Vegas, but who owns it, and what that means for every dollar that passes through the city's hands. Hidden behind the familiar brands and dazzling facades, a new class of owner has taken root along the Las Vegas Strip. These are not casino operators, but institutional landlords, giant real estate trusts, and investment firms that hold the deeds to the city's most iconic properties. The most powerful of these is Vici Properties, a company whose name rarely appears on the Strip's billboards, but whose reach now extends across the heart of Las Vegas. Born out of bankruptcy court and shaped by Wall Street, Vici is not in the business of running casinos or hosting shows. Its business is collecting rent, billions of dollars a year, from the operators who once owned the land themselves. Alongside Vici stands Blackstone, another Wall Street heavyweight. Blackstone's real estate arm owns the ground beneath Bellagio, Aria, and Vidara, leasing them back to the very companies that built and branded them. Together, these firms have quietly become the Strip's dominant landlords, their headquarters located thousands of miles from Las Vegas Boulevard. The operators, MGM Resorts, Caesars Entertainment, Hard Rock, Apollo, and others, may still control the day-to-day spectacle, but the ultimate power now belongs to the landlords who own the dirt and the buildings. The term Wall Street landlords is no exaggeration. These companies answer to shareholders and pension funds, not gamblers or tourists. Their influence is felt in boardrooms and earnings calls, in lease agreements that stretch for decades, and in rent obligations that never decline. The operators, once the undisputed kings of the Strip, have become tenants, locked into contracts that dictate what they pay, how they maintain the properties, and even what changes they can make. The result is a city where the true owners remain in the shadows, shaping the economics of Las Vegas from afar, while the familiar names on the marquees pay rent for the privilege of staying in the game. On January 15, 2015, Caesars Entertainment Operating Company entered bankruptcy court facing $18.4 billion in debt, an amount that threatened not just the company, but the jobs and livelihoods tied to its empire. In the hearing rooms, creditors weighed their options: accept pennies on the dollar or demand something more substantial, the land itself. This was not a typical bankruptcy negotiation. Major players like Apollo Global Management and Oaktree Capital scoured the books, calculating that the real estate beneath Caesars casinos might outlast any brand or business plan. Internal emails surfaced, revealing pressure to seize the dirt rather than settle for fleeting cash. With $9 billion of disputed debt at stake and rivalries running high, the court became a battleground for control of the Strip's most coveted parcels. Union leaders warned of job losses. Caesars executives pleaded for a path to keep operations running, but the creditors, armed with distressed debt strategies honed on Wall Street, saw an opening. Their proposal was to carve the real estate away from the operating company, giving creditors ownership of the land and buildings, while the casino business continued as a tenant. Judge Bruce Markell sided with the creditors' plan, setting in motion a new corporate structure. Out of the ashes, a real estate investment trust would be formed, one that would collect rent, not run roulette wheels. The decision set a precedent. The land under Caesars Palace, Harrah's, and the Flamingo would no longer belong to the casino operator. Instead, it would become the foundation of Vici Properties, a landlord with a steady stream of rent payments and a business model built on the permanence of Las Vegas real estate. What started as a desperate play to recover losses became the blueprint for a new era on the Strip, where the real money was in the ground, not the games. Vici Properties began as a legal workaround, but quickly became a financial powerhouse. On October 6, 2017, Vici spun off from Caesars Entertainment as a real estate investment trust, known as a REIT. A structure that allowed it to own the land and buildings while collecting rent from the operators. That first year, Vici started with 19 properties and a steady stream of $630 million in annual rent from Caesars alone. The company's name, borrowed from Julius Caesar's famous phrase, hinted at its ambitions to come, to see, to conquer. Just a few months later, in February 2018, Vici went public on the New York Stock Exchange, raising $1.4 billion in its initial offering. This was more than just a Wall Street debut. It was a war chest, giving Vici the capital to start acquiring more of the Strip. The REIT model offered a unique advantage. As long as Vici paid out most of its profits to shareholders, it could avoid the typical corporate tax burden. This tax treatment drew sharp criticism from lawmakers in Washington. Representative Kevin Brady and others on the House Ways and Means Committee called it an abuse of the REIT system, arguing that Vici and its backers were converting casino operating losses into tax-advantaged real estate profits. Internal IRS letters and heavy lobbying followed, but the structure held. Vici's tax bill remained a fraction of what a traditional corporation would pay, saving the company and its investors an estimated $1.5 billion in taxes over time. For Vici, the combination of rent checks and tax breaks provided a stable, predictable source of income. For the operators, the sale-leaseback meant a large cash infusion, but also a new line item, rent payments that would only increase over time. With its IPO proceeds, Vici was now in position to buy up more of the Strip, turning the bankruptcy playbook into a blueprint for expansion. Vici Properties wasted no time turning a bankruptcy workaround into a playbook for Strip domination. The company's first major move came in late 2017, when it bought the real estate of Harrah's Las Vegas for $1.1 billion. Caesars Entertainment kept running the casino, but from that day forward, rent checks starting at $87 million a year flowed to Vici. This was the template. Operators get a cash infusion, Vici gets the deed, and the rent never goes away. The deals grew larger and more ambitious. In 2022, Vici acquired the Venetian and Palazzo resorts, along with the massive Expo Center, for $4 billion. This was no minor addition. The Venetian alone covers more than 60 acres and boasts over 7,000 rooms. The operator, now Apollo Global Management, pays an estimated $250 million in annual rent. The message was clear. Vici wasn't just collecting properties, It was assembling a portfolio of the Strip's most recognizable icons. But the real transformation arrived with the MGM Growth Properties acquisition. In a $17.2 billion transaction, Vici took over the real estate under MGM Grand, Mandalay Bay, Luxor, Excalibur, New York, and Park MGM, essentially swallowing MGM's entire Strip footprint. The master lease with MGM Resorts alone brings in more than $1 billion a year. The structure locks MGM into 25-year terms with built-in rent escalators, ensuring that the cost of doing business on the Strip only goes up. The most recent escalation came with the Golden Entertainment deal, announced in late 2025. For $1.16 billion, Vici is set to acquire the Strat and 6 other locals-focused properties, adding another $87 million in initial annual rent. When the deal closes, Vici's control will stretch to more than 660 acres along Las Vegas Boulevard, an empire built not on gaming, but on the relentless logic of collecting rent. With each acquisition, the gap between who operates the Strip and who truly owns it grows wider, and the cost of entry for operators keeps rising. Blackstone's arrival on the Strip brought a different playbook, one that prized trophy assets over sprawling portfolios. In 2019, Blackstone paid $4.25 billion for the real estate beneath the Bellagio, instantly setting a record for the largest single property sale in Las Vegas history. MGM Resorts, the longtime operator, kept just a 5% stake and signed a long-term triple net lease, agreeing to pay $245 million in annual rent. For the first time, the Bellagio's fountains, conservatory, and gaming floor belonged to a landlord whose headquarters sat in New York, not Nevada. The numbers only grew more staggering. By 2023, Blackstone had sold a 22% stake in the Bellagio to Realty Income for $950 million, valuing the property at $5.1 billion, over $1.3 million for every room. MGM, once the owner, now sends roughly $250 million in rent each year for the privilege of running its former crown jewel. The sale-leaseback model here is absolute. Blackstone collects the rent, while MGM shoulders every cost of taxes, insurance, and maintenance, locked into a contract that stretches decades into the future. The Bellagio deal was not a one-off. In 2021, Blackstone acquired the land under Aria and Vidara for $3.9 billion, again leasing the properties back to MGM. These transactions injected billions into MGM's balance sheet, but replaced ownership with a permanent rent bill. Unlike Vici, which built its empire through a series of acquisitions and a REIT structure, Blackstone's approach has been more targeted, fewer properties, but at the absolute top end of the market. For visitors, the difference is invisible. The Bellagio's marble floors and famous fountains still dazzle, but the money flows up and out, past the casino cages and hotel desks, to institutional landlords who view the Strip as a stream of predictable cash. The operators, once kings of their own castles, now pay rent for the right to keep the lights on. In this new era, even the most iconic resorts are just tenants on land owned by Wall Street. Lease agreements on the Strip are built for permanence. Operators like MGM Resorts and Caesars sign contracts that run 25 to 30 years, often with options to renew into the middle of the century. These are not ordinary leases. The terms are triple net, which means the tenant pays not just rent, but also covers all property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, leaving the landlord insulated from nearly every risk. The rent itself is locked in and only moves in one direction, up. Most deals include a 2% annual escalator, guaranteeing that the rent bill rises each year, regardless of business conditions. During the COVID shutdown, when revenue dropped to zero, Vici and Blackstone still collected every dollar, on time and in full. Vici's chief financial officer, David Kieske, put it bluntly: even if a tenant wants to tear down a casino, the rent does not change. Analyst John Decree has cautioned that these contracts have never truly been tested in a prolonged downturn. The obligation is absolute, and the cost floor never falls. MGM's annual rent bill now tops $1.4 billion, a structural cost that never existed when the company owned its properties outright. For operators, these relentless payments are a fixed part of doing business, no matter how many rooms are booked or how many chips are cashed in. The result lands squarely on the shoulders of visitors. Resort fees, which once barely registered, have climbed to $45 or even $50 a night. Parking, once free, now comes with a daily charge. Restaurant bills carry extra surcharges that are rarely explained. Frank Fantini, a longtime gaming analyst, puts it plainly: MGM no longer owns an appreciating asset, has a rent expense it never had before, and the land once sold is gone forever. During the pandemic shutdown, when casino floors were empty and revenues vanished, operators borrowed billions just to keep up with rent. The money that used to build new attractions or lower prices now pays Wall Street landlords first. The cost of rent, invisible to most, is quietly baked into every dollar spent on the Strip. A handful of operators still hold their ground on the Strip, refusing to join the wave of sale-leasebacks that has swept through Las Vegas. Wynn Resorts owns both Wynn and Encore outright, along with 34 acres of undeveloped land, some of the most valuable real estate left on Las Vegas Boulevard. Genting Group controls Resorts World, while Phil Ruffin keeps the deeds to Circus and Treasure Island. The Alardi family still owns Casino Royale, a rare family-run holdout among corporate giants. Together, these independent owners represent a shrinking patchwork of autonomy in a city increasingly shaped by Wall Street landlords. Beyond the towers and marquees, 33 acres of prime Strip land remain undeveloped, held as a strategic reserve by Vici Properties. The company's president, John Payne, calls the Strip the world's premier cash machine and makes no secret of Vici's appetite for further expansion. As the rent rolls climb past $3 billion a year, the balance of power is set by who holds the dirt and who will control the next chapter of the Las Vegas story. Today, over $3 billion in rent flows annually from the Strip's iconic casinos to Wall Street landlords. These costs are embedded in every room rate and resort fee. As Vici and Blackstone expand, the once local balance of power turns increasingly corporate and remote. The stakes aren't just financial, they shape every visitor's experience. In Las Vegas, who owns the land quietly decides who pays the price. Share your thoughts below.